Okay, I feel the room is ready, so we're ready to kick off this next session here. Thank you for joining us, and also to those watching online. This is a session that's going to hone in on AI, harnessing technology in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And in fact, interestingly, Building Bridges has put a question mark at the end of that. So those are sort of prompting us to really delve in here and really understand what is the state of AI in this context and where are the critical sort of interventions that we can make to really ensure that we're putting the potential of AI to good work. Very briefly, I'm Emma Benhammer. I'm from the Villa Institute. It's a new Swiss foundation, but with a very big ambition, and that is to help accelerate the net zero nature positive economy, but through intergenerational collaboration. So really bringing kind of the next generation into the conversations and help shaping the solutions with experts, entrepreneurs, executives, and others. And the role of emerging technology, of course, is an absolutely critical part of this. So to kick us off, just a little bit of framing before I come to my great panel here. The Economist, a couple of weeks ago, reported AI as the biggest gamble in business history. More than $1 trillion is being spent on data centers for artificial intelligence, even though companies are still not sure how to use it and adoption rates are low. So I'm quoting there. But it also said, though many workers may simply be using it in secret. So the kind of questions I want to ask today are, well, how much of that experimentation and adoption is actually being put to the work of the SDGs? And how much is it helping to accelerate the transition to a net zero nature positive, but also equitable economy? What's the potential, but also what's holding us back? And how can investing in AI accelerate this transition? But also, how is AI enabling impact investing? And I mention those two dimensions because I've got a very diverse panel here, and we're going to be straddling from macro to micro to within business and strategy to really big, bold ambitions. So bear with us, but we will do our best to paint a picture of both the reality today, but hopefully the potential and the future together. So that's what we're going to try and unpack today, and to help me, as I said, 5 amazing speakers. We're going to structure this in 3 parts. First, I really want to look at how is AI being put to good use, so really understanding some of these success stories. Then we'll look at what's holding us back, what are the barriers and risks that we still need to overcome. And then finally looking at, of course, in this context, you know, if funding was really available to unlock the potential of AI, how could we and would we put that money to work? Where and how can AI have the greatest impact, both at speed and at scale? So I will try and make time as well for you to come in here in the room, at least, with questions later on in the conversation. But first round, just to kick us off and also to introduce this amazing panel of speakers that I have with me today. Ksenia Fontaine, you're leading the strategic partnerships for the AI for Good and at the ITU, of course, and this, we were just talking, this conference center was hosting an amazing AI for Good summit earlier this year. Now, you spend all your time on raising the profile of AI's capacity to address global challenges, whether they're social, environmental, but also ethical adoption. So I'd love you to help set the scene here. What's your current sort of diagnostic of AI and how it's being applied for SDGs? What are some of the contextual pieces that we need to help set the scene here?
Yeah, thank you so much, Emma, and hello, everyone. This is a really pleasure to be here today with you. So, you know, AI for Good was created in 2017 by the International Telecommunication Union. And just think about it for a second. It sounds like ages in terms of AI years, right? And at that time, AI was available to a few groups of countries or regions. And now we see AI is impacting the planet and people globally. So AI for Good was built on the premise that now we have actually less than 5 years to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And AI holds great promise, from climate change to clean energy to affordable healthcare and personalized education. The applications are here, but then how do we know and how do we ensure that they actually work equally well on men, on women, on people with disabilities, on the elderly, children, people with different skin colors, and people from low-income countries? So what we see quite often is that the fast-paced tech industry adapts the approach, we build it now and we fix it later. At AI for Good, we think differently, and these are the questions about AI and ethics that we think about from the start. So AI for Good mission is, simply put, that we identify trustworthy AI applications, we build skills, standards, advanced AI governance for sustainable development. And how do we do this? Of course, we can't do this alone. So we work together with 37 UN sister agencies as partners, and this is virtually the entire UN ecosystem leveraging the AI for Good platform on a daily basis. And of course, AI experts would say, and we have many of those here today, that AI is too important to be left to the experts, right? So we made lots of efforts to bring the community together and as many voices as possible to the table, from governments, UN, academia, industry, youth, and even artists and athletes.
Great, thank you. That helps sort of set the scene a bit in terms of what AI for Good is doing, and we'll come later to where we think sort of that application actually is and how much we're seeing in terms of success, but also barriers to that. Mark Bayashoda, managing partner at Deloitte. Your company presents itself as instrumental in helping clients achieve growth goals with AI, and in preparation for this, we said, you know, if you could help bring to life one or maybe two examples of success, just in terms of what you're proud of and where you're seeing AI being put to good work through your clients and private sector partners.
So a very difficult question, because it requires a lot of focus, and we are really doing a lot of different things as a company. A huge investment in thought leadership. Also, we built an AI for Good report, 90 pages with a lot of use cases and governance frameworks to ensure responsible AI being implemented. We are doing pro bono projects to clean up the ocean, for example, leveraging AI. But then if you're asking for 1-2 examples where we helped clients, for example, in the UK, there is a lot of pressure on the healthcare system. We helped there the NHS to improve, on the one hand side, their processes, and on the other hand, take burden from the medical professionals. Now, when I say that, what is AI for me about? It's a tool that helps us process huge amounts of information, both numbers, but now 1.5-2 years ago was also this Gen AI wave coming that is able to understand texts. So in the NHS context, for example, we help them analyze a lot of numbers to get recruiting processes speeded up, and helped health professionals to take care of documentation, so that they really can spend more time with their patients, and all the paperwork can be automated, still confirming all the regulatory requirements that exist in the UK.
Fantastic. So that, again, sort of looking at a specific example, but we're going to come back to, well, what are the key success factors as well from a business standpoint?
So I guess from a business standpoint, it's very important that the initiatives that are started on the AI side, that they really interlink to the strategic goals of your organization. That not the technologists are taking on the responsibility for the use cases, but that you really interlink strategy and the results of the AI initiative, and that you consistently measure these. Transparency for me is very important. So we did a survey here in Europe, asked 30,000 people in the streets, and there were a lot of people, it was 51% that said they actually do not know what their organization, what kind of objectives they are having when investing in AI. And there is a lot of worries, that people are losing their jobs. So from my perspective, it's very important to take these worries away by explaining what needs to be achieved, and when these objectives are set up on the AI side, they should not solely focus on efficiency gains. It would be very good to focus on sustainability as an example, on growth, on new products, on new services that are provided. And if it's on efficiency, then let's focus the initiatives on activities that are not really liked by the people that are doing them, because they're very monotonous, for example.
Great. So the strategic goals, as long as the strategic goals sort of embed as well, of course, that goal around SDGs, and it's at the core of the strategy, then hopefully that's
And the important thing is there is this initial alignment that needs to take place, but then you also need to establish an organization that is consistently measuring if these AI use cases really pay into these objectives that had been defined.
So measurement there, super. Thanks for setting the scene, Mark. We'll come back. Louis Schwab, thank you for joining us. Louis is CEO and co-founder of Naera. And the nice story is that you came from the world of private banking and wealth management to create Naera. And you present Naera as the first AI agent to decrease transaction costs, but also increase confidence in SDG investments. So I would love for you to tell your story. What led you to actually taking that leap of faith into setting up your new company, and a little bit more about Naera?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for having me. I think when I reflect about this question, I was thinking, how did I even started to work in private banking and wealth management? And what I realized is I've always been weirdly drawn into things I don't understand and want to learn more about it. And back in the days, when I had to choose what I had to do an apprenticeship, and I was like, okay, I want to learn about market economies, where is the best thing to do that, and went to private banking. Through my tab in private banking, when you do an apprenticeship, the advantage is you work across maybe 20 different teams over a course of a super short span of time. And so I saw so many different type of management style, and I was like, okay, management is quite important. So I went to study management to see what was the cause of the differences. And then through my study, back in the days was the time of let's say the early days of blockchain, crypto, I started being curious about what this new way of doing finance could bring, and so I got curious to that. This led me to actually be interested in sustainability, and I think sustainability, SDG, nature has been the one last thing I got interested in, and also once you get so deep into this topic, you can't unsee what you saw, and it became the North Star. And how did AI came in? I think I was quite reluctant to AI for a long time, because it was this sort of machine that will replace human at some point. So it's my co-founder that was we're talking about what we wanted to do to help investment in SDG, and it was look, there's a huge potential with the arrival of Gen AI and agentic infrastructure that we can do something with that. And I started learning about it, and indeed that's what I realized. There's actually a huge potential to actually use this technology to drive investment in sustainability in SDG, and that's what led us to create Naera. So shortly put, what we try to do is to create a technology that enables to engage. It sits with investment team at different institutions, and that help engage the clients into sustainability. And I think this is where we also the power of just changing the tones of your emails to fit for different type of audience. And now the question is can we do that to actually better understand different clients, they provide the objective, and then create narrative that are most likely to draw them and target them into understanding why they should put their money into investing, into impact investing, while having a rationale behind that we know that these investments are actually economically viable and that they will provide the right risk-adjusted return. And that's the other part of the infrastructure we are building, which is more a connection of knowledge, right? When you're doing investment, there's so many different persons that need to provide their expertise to ensure that the investment is viable. And like by connecting this expertise to AI workflow, we then enable people that are not necessarily familiar with SDG investment, sustainable investment, to suddenly have the capacity to make this investment. And I think that's really what we're trying to do on the twofold, is like enabling any investor to be able to propose sustainable investment to their client and have a way and a good rationale to market it to them.
Great, thank you. And maybe I'll come back later once we've heard from the others to dig a little further, Louis, on what is that tipping point that's kind of getting to the SDG specifics, and also what are the things you're seeing that are holding companies back or barriers to that. Jana Gevorgian, I've had the pleasure of us sort of working together on this amazing ambition and vision that you have, and I'd love for you to bring it to life. Jana is the director of the Global Earth Observations under the umbrella of the World Meteorological Organization, but in many ways you're a force for good, and I've seen that and seen you in action with a massive ambition. So would love you to describe that ambition with the Global Ecosystems Atlas, but also specifically where you're seeing the role of AI and the potential there in the context of what you're trying to achieve.
Thank you, Emma, and good morning, everyone. Really nice to be here with you. You know, I tried to ask AI, I asked ChatGPT how that would answer that question. Can AI help us accelerate SDGs? And it said, yes, absolutely. And then it proceeded to give me a very, very long answer. And so, you know, I want to say it's really not just AI, actually. It's IA. And that IA usually stands for augmented intelligence. And that was a perfect example of that. You can use AI to get you that first insight, but you have to really apply your own human judgment to make something meaningful out of that first prompt that you've given, right? And so I definitely want to preface by saying I don't think AI is the magic dust and all be all, and it's going to really solve all of our SDG challenges and issues. It's certainly an important tool in our arsenal that we need to be using robustly. My organization, Group on Earth Observations, as the name suggests, it's about the Earth as an Earth system. And if I were to have more than 3 minutes, I would probably ask the room, when you close your eyes and you think of the Earth, what do you see? What is that image that you conjure up? And many of you maybe would say that beautiful blue marble, you know, the image of the planet Earth from space. And it's gorgeous, it's blue, it's brown, it's green, it's white. And what you feel from it is that harmony, the equilibrium, the state of equilibrium where everything kind of holds together. Because all the systems on Earth are so interconnected. And it requires our attention in that very interconnected way to make sure that we sustain the integrity of that Earth system. So at Group on Earth Observations, I would say we are the curators of big Earth data. There's a lot of data about the Earth that's collected by satellites in the space, ships on the sea, feet on the ground. There's a lot of data. Somehow we're still stuck in the state we're not quite achieving that coveted equilibrium. And so our role is to make sense of all of that data by curating it, by ensuring that we are realizing the value of it and then packaging it as decision support tools for all of you in this room who really need to drive action with confidence. SDGs represent that kind of an interconnected system. They're all interconnected. We cannot be focusing so much on just generating renewable energy without really thinking what that does to life on Earth and life below water. We're talking about nature-based solutions being critical to enabling progress, in fact, in all of the sectors, whether it's supply chain, infrastructure, renewables. So our mission within GEO is to use information about the Earth to give the kind of tools in the hands of the users that can help with those integrated approaches to solving problems, solving climate and nature challenges in tandem. Because they are two sides of the same coin, because they are part of the same system. So an example that Emma referred to is our current effort to actually help put companies' nature on your balance sheets so that you create critical natural nature assets and ecosystems assets in the same way that you would treat all your other assets, and really help change the way, the business model of the private sector, corporates, financial institutions, so that you factor those nature assets into the entire life cycles, from identifying location for your projects to sort of monitoring the risks on nature and to the operations from changes in the natural environment. And that's a huge task if you really want to tackle it at planetary scale that you cannot do without artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, when used with quality data, open data, can certainly help us map ecosystems that are currently not mapped. The foundational models that are built on geospatial data these days are beginning to include species data, acoustic data. So by incorporating the sounds of the species that are found in a particular location, we are able, in fact, to model and map the distribution of ecosystems that are associated with the habitat of those species. This allows us to sort of map the unmapped in the way and at pace that we were not able to do before. But the huge underpinning and the importance of it is the openness and the quality of the data that goes into these models. And that's where we, with the Group on Earth Observations and our partners for public and private sector, really put a lot of emphasis in the openness of these results, so they can be interrogated by anyone, so that they can be further innovated upon, so that organizations like Deloitte and Naera can actually use this as part of their data ecosystems to generate insights and intelligence needed for businesses.
Super. Thanks, Jana. We'll come back for more, but you made the connection, which was I'm starting to see a nice sort of system coming together here as well to support each other, to make sure we get the quality, but also the commitment of AI for good. Melanie Biella, I'm going to come to you now. That you lead the climate transition strategy of EFG Asset Management. And we were talking earlier in terms of just the crucial role that your company and you play in helping redirecting capital for planet positive action and practices. And so the question for you, just to kickstart this, is from a global equity investor standpoint, how do you see AI really enabling the drive towards that low carbon economy? Paint a little picture there, and we'll keep it short so that I can come round again for another round of conversations. Thanks, Melanie.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and good morning, everybody. So, yeah, let's make it maybe a little bit tangible with the companies that are using today AI already. And there are many of them that are using AI for good. And because I'm a climate transition fund manager, stock examples that come to mind is, for example, Johnson Controls, a smart buildings technology manufacturer. So when you're operating a building, so when you're heating, cooling, ventilating, powering a building, then you face the issue of optimizing all that energy use, right? And the challenge you often have is that the systems are disjointed, they don't provide real-time data, so it's quite difficult to save costs in the end, right? So what Johnson Controls provides is a system that actually analyzes all the real-time data that is generated by the monitoring systems within the building. So they monitor all that is going on in the building, but also outside. So think of also weather conditions outside. And they combine all these information real time and give you a tailored, actionable recommendation how to optimize your energy usage. And like that, you as a company can save costs, save emissions. And this, I would say, is quite crucial, because when you think of operating buildings accounting to almost 30% of global CO2 emissions, that is quite important that we make progress there. Another example, Xylem, a global water technology company. Here they face the challenge that when in the past they were asked by the customers to design water treatment plants, they were teams involved from different departments with different tools, with different processes, so actually it took them months to come up with a proposal. Now they integrated all their tools in one platform, and like this they can automate the design of these water treatment plants. So they come up with first proposals within hours, not months. The result is consistent, and actually, what is maybe even more important is that how they design the plants is more efficient, is more sustainable. Last example, Schneider Electric, an automation energy management company. Here we face, for example, the situation that a lot of industrial plants have a huge energy cost that they face, and it's quite difficult to manage this energy because it's difficult to predict energy demand. You don't want to run the risk that the plant suddenly doesn't have energy when it's needed, and systems are inefficient. So what Schneider here provides is a solution that helps these companies to analyze actually the data from all the energy systems powering these specific manufacturing plants, analyzing that data real time, identify inefficiencies, come up with predictive consumption patterns like this, let these plants to be run more efficient and with lower costs. Now, this actually is all not that much the focus for me as a climate transition manager, because what I'm more interested in is actually the commitment and the measurable actions that companies are taking towards a more sustainable economy. So where AI comes in is more as an enabler, as how companies are going about it. But I think what is really important when it comes to AI is the intent behind it. So that's what's crucial when we are selecting companies.
Super, thanks Melanie, and that reinforces, I think, the strategic goals piece and the element there, but also the measurement and control afterwards once applied. Super, so you've heard some great examples of success and how we can put AI to good work, but obviously we're far from meeting the SDGs, and AI, a lot of still question marks and debate, but also sort of the question of equality as well when we look at the sort of global landscape in that context, and how we really address some of the barriers and risks to applying AI for good. So I'd love to take the next round, and this, you know, let's make this a conversation. I'd love to also bring in questions from you shortly. But my question is, like, what's holding this progress back when it comes to applying AI for good? What is holding us back? What are the key barriers, and what are the big risks that we need to overcome? And I'd love to sort of start to also hone in on what are some of those critical interventions that could be made in the system that could really unlock the potential here and apply it sort of more rigorously. So really open to anyone to come in and start that sort of barriers and risks that you're seeing from your different perspectives. Who wants to?
Perhaps I start. Yeah, so I believe we should put a lot of focus on education. And I start perhaps with a little example here in Switzerland. We were asked by a health insurer to come in to educate their C-level executives and afterwards also their board members on what kind of impact AI might have. And we did this together with a client team. So Deloitte, I presented our thought leadership, what's happening overall in the various regions, what's happening in the various industries, what happens specifically for health insurers, and then the client team members, the head of AI and his colleague, they presented then specific use cases that they set up. Very, very positive feedback from the C-level executives. Then I'm going back by train with the guys that are responsible for initiatives and said, guys, huge opportunity now to get this set up, to get your processes towards your customers really advanced, to provide new service offerings, to really improve the supply. And the feedback was, look, we have so many things to do, and we are lacking of skills, of additional people. Yeah, let's slow down a little bit. When I'm talking about education, I think it's really about. So what was positive is that the board and the C-levels were excited about it and wanted to learn more, but I think it's not sufficient. I think we really need to take care that the people that have the power understand what kind of potential is there, but then also how to translate it into action, to pull the people down there with them. And then second thing, because I think you mentioned it's not magic dust. I would agree currently it's not magic dust. But I believe we could compare AI going forward more and more with electricity. It's the last 2 years, all the consultancies, all our clients are focusing on use cases to get things done. I personally think it's a huge opportunity to get AI rolled out, to democratize knowledge. I guess most here in the room have seen Star Trek with these little AI pins where you press upon and then you can talk with a computer. We will see this very soon coming more and more, and it will be possible for poor communities in development countries to get professional help that is as advanced as here in Switzerland. Professional help, for example, in medical treatments, that you really take a picture on your mobile phone of skin or of some blood analysis that was done locally, and Gen AI will tell you what needs to be done and will help you to communicate with your local doctors to get really the best treatment to you that's currently out there.
Thanks, Mark. Anyone else want to build on this? I'd love to maybe reinforce, so the role of education, but educating kind of the skills, the learning within companies needs to come from obviously the leadership and a broader cultural shift, I guess, within the organization and focus. Love the human augmentation piece there. Question is sort of in the developing world, how far are we from really bringing our world together as one? Melanie, you want to come in?
Yeah, so from an investor's perspective, I'm afraid we still have to talk about data. I hate that, but it's still really an issue. And I think when it comes to AI, data is the input, right? So if we as an investor want to measure a company's progress in terms of climate transition, if we don't have the data available, accessible, in the right quality, and in a consistent way, yeah, we still struggle, right? So that's, I would say, one major challenge from an investor's perspective. And then when talking about sustainability, I think we just also have to address the elephant in the room, which is that AI per se for itself is actually also coming at the cost, at the environmental cost, right? So not to neglect that. Training all these models, running all these models actually requires a huge amount of energy. So we're making progress in how we power that energy, but it's a huge task. And the other thing is then also all these intense computing mechanisms, they generate a massive amount of heat. And this heat needs to be cooled. And for this massive heat, we need more water-based cooling systems, cooling solutions. And again, water is not really abundant a resource. So here also big challenges that need to be addressed.
Super. Thanks for raising that, Melanie. I think it's critical. And you spoke about quality data, but also the measures, but then also how do we even power AI in itself and make sure that it's really delivering that planet positive outcome.
Maybe
so, yeah.
If I can just jump in on following up on that, I think the problem of data maybe comes from another problem, which is a problem of sharing this data and data privacy, because at the end of the day, majority of entities have this data. It's just a question. You don't want to share this data because you don't know where it's going, you don't know how it's going to be used, and you don't know if you're going to keep the ownership of this data. So I think there's big questions how do we enable the transfer of this data and the usage of this data so each entity can actually collaborate on their data set rather than building their own model, then their own trained data, because it's true on the point of training model. If each company, because they don't want to, or they are scared to share their data to a shared model, trains their own model for the same purpose, and each company has their own model for everything across the world, that's a massive waste of of money, knowledge, and also impact, because it creates like a worst outcome for everyone in terms of like the outcome you receive from the models, and the worst outcome for the planet as well, because you just overused and purposelessly trained model.
Jana, what's your experience? Because you're pulling together all the data sets in terms of sharing the data. What are you seeing? What are you not seeing? Where are some of the barriers there to sharing the data?
Yeah, indeed, and I couldn't agree more. I think it's, which is why I emphasize my first response, the importance of openness. I really think over time, being open in terms of sharing code and models is actually going to be a sign of prestige, because really that is where we gain efficiencies, and that's where we really can make things accessible to everyone. They can be more trusted, the results of the AI outputs, but they can also be a lot more accessible. Currently, we have, mostly in the global north, all the major developments of the transformative AI solutions. But if we really want to achieve that global equity, then the global south, and honestly, I hate these labels, but that's what they are currently in our parlance. So the global south has to be part of the solution generation as well, not just always the recipient of them. And what we're seeing, in fact, is that's where sometimes the resistance is. It's not so much that they don't trust the output, but they're reluctant to take on something that they were not part of the development. And so we really want to be able to, you said, I think, Mark, democratize, right? We want to be able to ensure that this AI-powered solutions are available to all, everywhere, anywhere, so they can be built upon, including providing additional input that comes from that local knowledge, you know, and that's where we need to build those bridges. A model that's been developed by a group of experts, even in Germany, if it is open and it can be used by a local community somewhere in New Zealand, where they can put in their labels based on their very precise understanding of the environment that surrounds them, we get A, participation, B, a much better result out of the model, and 3, generally that trust around why AI can really help us accelerate the global equity towards achieving those SDGs. So I think it is a matter of trust and accessibility and equity that needs to always be kind of on the forefront. And then from the finance side, if we wait until everyone else has used the outputs from the nature climate data side until the next investor feels like, okay, then there is no risk, I can do this too now, we're still going to be treading water for another decade. And I think really this is where we need those champions, we need those visionary entrepreneurs, providers, investors to start with what's available, and things will improve over time indeed. But not to deploy these solutions, not to use them as the strategic arsenal that they are, is simply not smart business. And it's really only through this life cycle and the feedback loop that we can ensure that this technology is fit for purpose, is evolving based on the customer experience, and progresses forward.
Super, thanks, Jana. I'm going to come to the audience in a minute, but just check with Melanie and Ksenia if there's anything else you want to add. Yes?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Emma. And I would like to really build on what Jana just said regarding the lack of access to the resources, especially for the developing countries. The big issue, what we see if we take a step back, is actually the digital divide. So 2.6 billion still remain offline. Can you imagine this? So it's 1/3 of the world population. So how can we think about them accessing the AI tools for the benefits for their businesses in their daily life if they cannot just connect to the internet? So this is simple as it is. So how can we figure out this? We don't know. No one knows yet, right? Another thing, what we see is the lack of robust AI regulatory frameworks across the globe. So ITU conducted a few years ago the AI Readiness Landscape Survey among its 193 member states. Now we have 194. And so the results were actually striking. 55% of the nations, they don't have an AI strategy. And 80% of the nations, they don't even have a national AI regulatory framework. It means that those nations are ill-equipped with adapting AI into their businesses, into their education, so they don't have the framework for this, and it means that they cannot benefit from this revolution. Thanks.
Thank you, Ksenia. Melanie, you want to come?
Yeah, maybe just to respond to your comments about the finance industry. Fully agree. So if we wait for the perfect data, for the perfect method to be here before we start taking action, we will never start. So that's why we're starting and we're investing. But I think what is needed is this caution in front of the data, right? So that you have also this qualitative aspect to really check, safeguard that the commitment, the actions are really there and not just rely on the data. So that's how we solve it. Yeah.
Super.
That's why I was saying it's AI plus IA. Yeah. You use the AI, but you do apply that augmented intelligence to really get the best outcome.
It's coming together there. So any questions from the room? I'd love to see hands up. I see one already. Let's see if there are any more, because I might collect a few just to help my panel manage these. So good, I've got 3 hands up. So gentleman there and lady next to him.
So my name is Dan Chakadrenou. I'm consulting on science, tech, AI. One of the things that I usually get comments on is the fact that we AI people, we like to just go with our hammer and try to solve and see everything as nails. Now, in the developing countries, they don't have AI strategy because this is not in their priority. They don't have energy for that. They don't have electricity. I just heard the fact that the electricity capacity in Africa is the same as Germany. So this is ridiculous to think that now we want to advance AI and strategy in developing countries where we don't focus all our efforts on climate and energy efficiency to bring them. So what is your perspective on the fact that we want to increase right now what we have in the Western world to really make this for everyone? I mean, there's a limit for the growth, right? So yes. How can we do it?
Great, thank you. So I captured that, yeah, really closing that digital divide that Ksenia brought up. I'm going to collect a few more and then let the panel respond. So the lady next to Jennifer.
I actually just wanted to echo...
Could you introduce yourself as well, please?
Yeah, I'm from EFG, and I'm RM. I'm a colleague of Melanie. And I just want to echo exactly what he just said. I think everything is a resources. So even AI is a resource, which we have to carefully use and not use everywhere. Because exactly what the gentleman said with the outcome of the energy, if the lack of people who has no AI and no access would have AI and electricity, I think we have a huge issue. Not to be egoistic, just be realistic. I think talking about ESG, we have to be realistically use our resources.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that reinforcing statement. There was one more question here, and I'll come to the person at the back in a second.
Yes, thank you very much for this very interesting panel discussion. I'm Marianne Mensa, and I'm Professor of Sustainable Innovation in France. My question goes to Jana. How does your organization collaborate with institutions, scientific institutions such as IPCC or IPBS on biodiversity and climate change? And also with generative AI, how do you ensure the reliability of the analysis? Because we know now that, around 30% of what is generated by AI systems is not necessarily reliable.
Thank you. So I'll take these three sort of statements and questions back to the panel. So we're really looking at closing the digital divide. Ksenia, you brought that up. Maybe more insights from the kind of report and that you've been building, and then to Jana on just the quality and ensuring sort of and understanding the collaboration with science and scientific institutions. Who wants to, I put you on the spot, but anyone can respond on this digital divide piece, of course.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. And well, global collaboration is the key, right? Well, we are coming from the UN, we know this about this. And we work together with many partners, especially from private sector like Deloitte, AWS, we work with academia institutions. And what we do, so a good example is this year we launched the AI for Good Impact Initiative at the AI for Good Summit in May. And the idea of this initiative is basically to fund AI solutions that could be adapted locally. So it means that instead of getting a solution developed in Silicon Valley and bringing it to Nigeria, we work together with local institutions based on the resources available on site with local governments and getting cloud credit support, for example, from AWS, or getting knowledge support from Deloitte, and building the solutions and deploying them for SDGs that could work in those countries. Another example is access to AI education. So we are developing together with our partners for our member states different AI toolkits for policymakers, again, in developing countries that can be adapted based on what they have in place, what are the resources. This is called the AI Skills Coalition that we launched in September, so pretty new, and we welcome all partners to join. And again, bringing the knowledge that exists, but also mixing it with the local community know-how, with local religions, local economics, local mindsets, and that worked pretty effectively, and there is definitely a potential here.
Super, thanks for sharing. Jana, come in.
I want to answer your question by way of an example. And I think we were talking about the importance of ensuring that we're sharing the outcomes of this AI development so that we're not spinning up the world where every organization is creating their own AI models of this and that, because there is simply no need for that. So an example is a small island developing state that we engaged with early on in our work of developing this dynamic map of all the world's ecosystems. Imagine a large ocean state really has very few resources. Within their government, they have 1.5 person who is a data scientist. There's no way they're going to create their own anything, right? And so we want to make sure that our solutions meet everyone where they are at. And where they were at the time said, we actually would love to be able to query your tool and get a text response to our questions, which means it's creating the kind of a pipeline using artificial intelligence that can actually work with spatial data, with language models, right? And then provide sort of queryable environmental parameters to the person sitting in the Ministry of Natural Resources in that large ocean state that I'm referring to. So this is them then not having to spend their own resources creating an AI solution, but benefiting from the solution that's built on the shoulders of giants. But what they do know is that because they were part of the engagement process, they can trust the output that comes out of that query. And that's where the beauty, I think, of us leveraging the experiences and the resources towards the kind of outcome that can meet everyone's needs really comes from. On your wonderful question about how we work with the science community, the question is super timely. First of all, the Group on Earth Observation expertise is providing science into many of the products of IPCC and IBIS. Right now, there is a IBIS assessment. They're meeting in Namibia, where some of our experts are. But I've just come back from Riyadh, where the land degradation desertification convention was meeting. And probably the biggest message that was coming out of the UNCCD COP was climate change, nature loss, land degradation are all so interconnected. We cannot afford to have different science streams. So one of the actions that we hopefully will find its way into the resolution is to create a global global science policy alliance for land that will be bringing all of the science from climate community, IPBES, and land together to really give that integrated scientific product to the policymakers. And our group is sort of leading the way by giving practical tools that will allow, like this map of all the ecosystems on Earth, so that the climatologists can be looking at the same ecosystems as the carbon sinks, so that the biodiversity community can be looking at exactly the same ecosystems as the resources that need to be conserved and restored, and so would the land. And so that's a very, very big momentum around this desire to really bring the science together into this one integrated pillar, inshallah, as they say. And then finally on the quality assurance, which is huge, truly. We are doing that hard due diligence of making sure that any result from the models actually gets validated. And that's where it's at. It's ensuring so that we're not just, sitting and thinking everything is a nail and I hit it and it's solved, but we actually partner with those who can validate that output. And then that validation keeps improving and reducing the error rate and improving accuracy of the outputs.
Super. Jana, thank you. You're starting to identify some core principles that any company, any organization should also be applying. So thank you for sharing. We've got 2 more hands up. I have a lady at the back there, and then across to Julius in a second.
Thank you so much. Maya Lovström from UN Women here. I just wanted to ask if you have a gender lens in this work.
Thank you. So a gender lens. I'll give you a moment to think through that. Julius, you have a question. Introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Emma. Julius Hill. I'm an advisor that works together with lots of social entrepreneurs, and so I have a question for Melanie. The examples you used were mainly mainly publicly traded organizations. Do you do any work in identifying private organizations that are they're focused on social impact that you're looking to invest in?
Super. So 2 questions there. One on the gender lens. How are we applying sort of AI for good, but through the lens of also equality, I would say?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in fact, we work very closely with UN Women on this issue at AI for Good. And there are 2 things that I would like to bring. One is gender-biased AI. And it's still here. So just to give an example, last week we went to Vegas to AWS reInvent, and this is like the biggest developer conference in the world with 50,000 participants. And what was surprisingly to me that most of those participants were men in their early 30s, pretty young and white. So these are the AI developers and engineers who actually take care of the data sets and who train AI models. So I don't know what we would think about gender-biased AI or free gender-based AI, but the fact that there is still a big lack of women engineers and AI developers participating in AI trainings, I think that's a big issue. So from our perspective, what we try to do is not to talk about gender, but actually to mainstream gender in AI. So what we would like to do is to run, for example, we run AI for Good pitching, Innovation Factory pitching competitions, and this is really to encourage female entrepreneurs to work on AI for Good solutions, to bring them to the table, to empower them and to encourage them to participate, and of course to sponsor them to come to Geneva, because you can imagine the trip to Vegas is pretty costly for someone living in South Africa just to come there. Thanks.
Super.
Maybe one word on that is like, I think at the end the reality, the bias comes from the reality of the world. So it's also like the best way to improve this thing is to improve like what is happening in the real economy, and then like potentially you don't even have to tweak the data set to say the right thing, because the data set actually represent what is happening in the world. And so if what is happening in the world is actually equal, then the AI don't have to be tweaked, because it will give you an equal output.
But maybe let's seize that opportunity as AI develops, like could really be a pioneer in closing that gap. So Julia's had a question for Melanie on the entrepreneurs, maybe the more startup, scale-up potentials.
Yeah, thanks very much for the question, and I think it was related more to the social part, right? So we talk a lot about the environmental part when it comes to sustainability, and I think one reason again is that on the environmental side we have more data available, right? So it's easier to have tangible starting point at least. On the social side, this is more tricky. I fully understand why you're I think referring to the private side of things, right? So what we're currently doing is investing in listed and focusing on the climate transition. Depends a bit how you view climate transition. You can take it so holistic that it also includes the social aspect. But I think it's a valid point where I think we need to focus more also on the social part, and I think also in the listed space it becomes more and more possible to also offer solutions there. But right now I'm afraid we don't have that solution. Yeah.
Thanks, Melanie. So I knew we'd run out of time, and I know there's more questions, but we've got a couple of minutes left, and I really want to ask the panel to hone in on sort of if we were able to wave that magic wand and put the money into AI so that it can really unlock its potential for SDGs. Like, what is the one call to action or critical intervention in the system? We've touched on a few, I know, but I'd love to get to a very concrete landing with the audience here today of, you know, what's the critical intervention in the system that you think can really unlock AI for good and for the SDGs in general? Can I come backwards like this, Melanie? Can I put you back on the spot?
Yeah, I think maybe to take a step backwards and not think about where to invest, but how to invest with what intention. And here, when it comes to call of action, I would say if we could just make sure we move from the right place. So it sounds a bit cheesy, but I really believe in it, so that we act from the heart, right? And no matter what follows, I think we'll have the right intention behind. And one other thing that I use a lot that helps me is that to go step by step further, although it's always challenging, is just to remember, or I believe in that, is that, you know, pessimists might sound clever, but it's the optimists that change the world. So that's my mantra, and yeah, that's my call to action.
Thanks.
Building on that, I would say it's the optimists and those who are just a little crazy, huh? And I'm not the one who said that. Steve Jobs who said that, right? Let's get a little crazy. Look, I think I'll go back to the very first thing I said and try to conjure up that beautiful image of the Earth. If we truly, and not to sound cheesy, if we truly believe that this Earth, with all of its systems, us included, it's all global commons. This is ours. And it really ought to be an all hands on deck kind of a situation where we all have to go beyond our limitedly scoped kind of a strategy to say, I have to put something in to really take care of that global commons. That is, let's say, our nature. And so in the spirit of that, for AI to really be realizing the potential that it does have indeed, it needs to be intelligent indeed. And what makes it intelligent is the data. And so data has to be seen as a strategic asset that everyone is willing to finance, because oftentimes it's kind of the last thing that people think about, if ever they think about it. We take it for granted. So I would say we absolutely all need to finance this so that it's always available, it's always accurate, it's always reliable, because that's what gives us confidence to take action. And in the same spirit, it's wanting to be open with your own data and share your own mapping, reports, whatever your data looks like. Because again, we're solving a global commons issue. And I was just thinking about the question about the social impact. Imagine if companies were actually truly sharing and putting in the public domain their data about sort of the results of the projects. And if we really started to, in this total open data ecosystem space, to be able to overlay different data layers about the nature, about social index, poverty, employment, etc., economic development, would we have an AI tool that could actually give an answer to where do we see the most positive social outcomes in the world? And could we then see what were some of the factors that went into creating that outcome? We could really sort of glean some interesting insights, but the problem is that some of those elements of this intelligence live in coffers and they're behind locks, and we're not able to tap into that massive knowledge that's out there.
Thanks, Jana. So the transparency and sharing of data. Louis?
Yeah, I think it's also on this sharing of data, maybe just giving what I believe could be a beautiful practical example if that ends up happening. Like looking at the investment world, I think we heard like the last few days of the conference, like one of the main problems is like the familiarity of investor with emerging markets, sustainable asset class, impact. And so building on what just been said is like, imagine that like you want to do impact investment, how do you know like if deals comes to you and investee present you the data, you never did it before, there's no way you're able to tell you if it's good or bad. And so it's going to be really difficult to actually start investing before building capacity. But certainly if you have this open data set, there's already thousands of firms that did this investment previously, and from the snapshot you can know if it's a good investment or not, and you don't need to build capacity, and directly you can start deploying your money, and that can really accelerate things. And obviously there's a lot of challenge for that, and maybe personal call to action on that, I think is just like being brutally honest to each other and challenge each other and understand, you know, like I'm from the startup ecosystem, but I worked in corporate finance before, and I know how governance is and how difficult it is sometimes to bring new innovation, bring new things. So from the innovator, from different sectors, just work together and say, hey, I can't do that because there's this, and this. And so then you can start to work on figuring out how do you build innovation that can be employ and deploy in the corporate world, and I think that's crucial.
Thanks, Louis. Mark, briefly.
So I would like to very much reiterate what Jana and Louis said. Openness, not only on the data side though, but also on the algorithms. So I think it's very important that organizations are not controlling AI, but that really we know that it's a mirroring reality, and know that the answers we are asking is really trying to respond to them with an objective truth. What I would also recommend is join ecosystems around AI. So really learn from other organizations, also organizations that are not in your own industry, because the speed that is out there is so fast. Every day there are new inventions. Every week there are big success stories at some clients. It's really about the exchange.
Super. And Ksenia Landas here.
Thank you. Maybe with a more high-level statement. As we often say at ITU, we are the AI generation, right? And this is our common responsibility to make sure that no one is left behind. And so to do this, I would invite all of you, private sector, bankers, investors, academia institutions, UN, to join this AI for Good global movement and contribute to the work that we've been doing. And of course, I invite you, all of you, to join the AI for Good Global Summit in Geneva next year that will take place in Palexpo on the 8th, 11th of July, 2025. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm going to leave you then with just one further perspective. Some of you have brought it up, which is kind of the role of education and learning in the future as well. And at the Villa Institute, we surveyed over 300 motivated and very talented change makers from around the world. These are 17-year-olds. And the report really sort of not surprisingly, but put AI as the most prevalent technology that they want to learn about, and they want to understand how it can be put to work to help protect the future of our planet. And so really what I'm saying is, let's also ensure that we're empowering that next generation when it comes to the mindset and the skills needed to really unlock the potential of AI for good. So with that, please thank my amazing panel today and all of you. And wishing you all a good rest of the day. Thank you.